Hello and good morning. Dear host, Honorable John Bosco Monte, President of Brazil Africa Institute, ladies and gentlemen, it's with appreciation I stand here before you on behalf of African Import-Export Bank as an Executive Vice President of Global Trade Bank. Afreximbank is a pan-African multilateral financial institution in which 53 of the 54 African states are shareholders. And we have the privilege of having from Brazil BNDES also as a shareholder. Afreximbank mandate is to finance and promote intra and extra-Africa trade, looking at investment and trade flows, and we're supporting them. At the outset, let me congratulate the Brazil Africa Institute continued commitment towards facilitating the Brazilian-Africa relationship and showcasing the immense opportunities that exist between our regions. So let me start first with an interesting fact. Long back, Brazil and Africa were one continent that was called, anybody knows what this continent were called? It's called Gondwana. One continent, Gondwana, actually, South America and Africa. And they got separated 100 million years back, and now we're here to help them come back together. It's a big task. So in the 20th century, African nations gained independence from European powers. Brazil began to strengthen diplomatic and economic ties with the African countries. The rise of South-South cooperation, which emphasized collaboration between the developed countries, led to closer ties between Brazil and African nations. Under leadership of His Excellency President Lula da Silva, Brazil increased its diplomatic ties with Africa. Being embassies in various African countries, government also prioritized Africa in its foreign policy, recognizing the importance of political and economic collaboration between South-South and the trade and investment, especially in areas like agriculture, education, healthcare, and more recently with the expansion of BRICS, has created even closer links between Africa and Brazil. The benefit of this deeper collaboration is evident in the growth between trade between the two regions. So the bilateral trade between the regions more than doubled over the last 2 decades to reach 20 billion. However, despite this impressive growth, trade between the regions, Africa and Brazil, remains marginal. The Brazil only accounts for 1% of Africa total exports, and Africa accounts for 4% in Brazil exports. An entire continent is only 4% of Brazil continent exports. So the opportunities to reposition the expand Africa-Brazil relationships are immense. Africa represents a wealth of trade and investment opportunities for Brazilian businesses, and I'll speak about some of those opportunities to get a feel of the landscape. It's driven by the natural resources in Africa, youthful population, they're all young, expanded consumer market, and ongoing economic reform aimed at improving the business climate. The Africa Continent Free Trade Agreement area, which is actually very key for everybody now expected to invest in Africa, is currently being implemented and integrating the African market. We will have around a single market of 1.4 billion people, and a GDP of 3.5 trillion. One market open for Brazil. The market expand to 2.5 million people by 2050. Africa holds 60% of the world uncultivated urban land, and also it's within their agriculture part, a lot of it is depending on rain, waiting for someone to invest in how to make this managed irrigation. A lot of investment is available there. And this makes agriculture a critical sector for Brazilian investment. The continent's agriculture potential remains largely untapped, basically providing opportunities for increasing productivity, investment, modern farming techniques that is used here in Brazil, agro-processing, food production. Africa also is rich in renewable energy resources, solar, hydro, geothermal, and the continent is seeking to increase electricity to the renewable energy and investment in Africa. Africa tech sector also is thriving. On energy, I'm leading also the Afreximbank, the establishment of Africa Energy Bank, and we're looking at expanding this. Within Africa, half of the continent don't have access to electricity, and 1 billion don't have access to clean energy. They have to use, so we call dangerous energy to cook their food. And there's a lot of area for investment and growing there. In the tech piece, we have a fast-growing scene in the world. We're seeing mobile technologies evolving, fintechs, e-commerce. The scene is very big there. There's a lot of young tech-savvy people that waiting for opportunities to collaborate, invest, and so on. And we've seen also a growing middle class. Consumers are growing. A lot of opportunities to invest in manufacturing. There is a lot of countries investing now in textile, automotive, electronics, and supported by the bank. Many governments now has established a global economic zones and industrial parks to attract investment to manufacturing and give tax incentives, infrastructure support in sectors like apparel, consumer goods, and automotive assembly. And I'll give you an interesting example on there. So in this industrialization, which we do with organization Arise Integrated Industrial Platform, which we're partner in, have deployed more than $1 billion to support the development of those industrial parks and special economic zones, including countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Malawi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, Kenya, Nigeria, elsewhere. And some of those successful implications, like in Togo, in Benin, and in Gabon, we've seen the countries shifting from exporting wood to exporting plywood and furniture. They stopped exporting cotton, they're now doing garments, and instead of exporting soy, they're exporting edible oil. The margins are totally different. There's more value for the country, and there's a lot of investment opportunity for them. So a lot of investment also you'll see as you browse Africa's opportunities into industrialization, transportation, affordable housing. There's a lot of demand. There's a country with a huge demand, and we are there to provide capital and support, and it's a very good match for what Brazil has. The last sector I want to chat about mostly is the healthcare sector. It's undergoing a lot of transformation. We increase demand of medical service, pharmaceutical, health technologies, opportunities around healthcare infrastructure also, building hospitals, clinic, diagnostic, particularly in urban areas, the African pharmaceutical market expanding. And I was having a chat with Dr. John Bosco now on how to help on capacity building using the talent that Brazil has and the R&D to take it into our industrial zones and develop this collaboration of technology together. So distinguished guests, as a Pan-African Institute covering 53 African economies of the 54, we've taken the view that boost African trade and investment and the integration of the region into global economies like here. And it depends on progressing on a different areas, on the diversification of industrialization, pushing exports, and so on. There is a funding gap anyway in Africa, around $120 billion annually, and this is where we're trying to help. There is a huge potential also of having partners, countries like Brazil, in tapping into the African diaspora and its wealth of experience and skills. To give you a feel of what the bank is doing as we move now into the area of the diaspora, we have already convened our first AGM in African Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. We already have 12 Caribbean countries have joining the bank as members because it's part of diaspora, and we're looking at global Africa, not only African who lives in Africa, but people with African origin who lived outside Africa. We have now supporting their financing the different sectors in the Caribbean. We have an office now in Bridgetown, Barbados, to show that this is the new global Africa boundaries for us. Brazil also is another frontier for us to support the link between us and Africa. We also, let me talk a bit about how can we help you and unlock Africa opportunities. In Africa's new orientation, Afreximbank as one of the continental leader, we're mandate lead arranger #1, book runner #1, administrative agent. We're leading the Africa tables in terms of how are we supporting. We're playing a vital role. We become the go-to DFI thanks to the success of understanding the continent's core challenges, competitive edge, optimal policy framework, and economic lever. We have 30 years now of dedicated experience to development of Africa, and what we've done is that we've developed a lot of specialized solutions for countries who want to access Africa, and we also have a lot of inventory solution to meet different demand as you go into Africa, such as direct lending, EPC plus finance, industry-specific program, hedging solution, risk sharing, syndication, debt and equity advisory, short-term trade and guarantees and confirmation, payments, whatever the form of support you want to go as you go into Africa, as you want someone to take the risk of the countries you're working with, take the risk of your investment, repatriation of fund after you're investing. We have a lot of those support solutions that we have. So at last, we have also, to enhance intra and extra Africa trade, we have developed an operationalized Africa Trade Gateway digital platform to cover full lifespan of trade and investment activities. So it's basically where companies all over the world gain access to strategic data, find out on their e-commerce platform who's buying and who's selling, looking at the African counterpart, checking also the KYC of the people they're dealing with, getting regulatory information, getting information about the countries they want to deal with. Even in addition to this, we have already launched PAPS, which is the Intra-Africa Payment and Settlement System. We're now allowing African countries to trade between each other using their local currency. So Egypt, for example, can import tea from Kenya with Egyptian pound, and Kenya can buy medication from Egypt in Kenyan shilling. And this is good because when a Brazilian company come and set up shop in Africa, using this free trade agreement area and the payment system we're creating, it will make that space very more conducive to them than ever and supporting them to succeed in Africa. So there is a very big opportunity also for Brazil to become a hub for South America into Africa, become like an aggregator that aggregate the trade going in and out, not only exporting Brazil product, but allowing other countries to export into Africa through our hub. So also let's not forget that we have 6 African countries that having Portuguese as official national language. And Brazil and these countries and West Africa can have a very strong relationship for the flows between Americas and Africa. And by leveraging Brazil logistic advantage and West Africa resource richness, we can establish a very interesting supply chain between the two continents and Brazil. Leveraging again on the free trade area, this will make this very interesting for both sides. So as we move forward, let's prioritize strategic partnership, knowledge sharing, innovation, and by doing so, we can capitalize on the collective strengths of Brazil and Africa with a robust trading network that will drive economic prosperity. I formally also invite you to attend the 4th edition of the Intra-Africa Trade Fair taking place in Algiers, Algeria, next year, September. We typically host over 35,000 visitors from all over 140 countries across the world, represent opportunity for Brazilian economic operators to engage with their African counterparts. I also encourage you to join the Africa Trade Gateway digital platform to get access to Africa verified traders, finance opportunities, and local currency payments. Together, we have the opportunity to redefine global trade dynamics between Africa and Brazil and to achieve more interconnected, prosperous future and connect back again our separated continents, Gondwana. Thank you.